Selectmen to order on Monday, March 9th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Please join me in saluting the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show all selectmen are present. Is it warm in East Madison?
Yes, it is. It's hot in here.
All right, consent agenda warrants, number 36, dated 2/24/2020. Number 37, dated 2/24/2020. Payroll register number 8, dated 2/20/2020. And number 9, 2/27/2020.
Move to accept. Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the warrants and payroll registers as read. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Acceptance of the meeting minutes of February 24th, 2020.
Move to accept.
Second. We have a motion and a second to accept the meeting minutes of February 24th, 2020. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. Old business, Mr. Moody?
None for me, sir.
Mr. Elias?
None for me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Savage? Mr. Duchamp?
None for me.
All right, items of communication, Mr. Town Manager.
Just a couple of things to pass along to you. I sat in briefly on the county commissioners meeting last week where they saw the first draft of the county budget. It's going to be up a little bit. I think they're still going to work through it through the budget process. Right now, it's about a 7% increase over last year. Anything changed?
Yeah, it's down to about 5 right now. It's still working.
So that, if I'm doing my calculations right, we won't know until we get the final numbers, that would equate to about a $50,000 increase to what Madison pays in their part of their county tax. So the other side of that is revenue sharing figures came out from the state this week. They're up higher than expected. So the town's revenue sharing that we're going to get is about $60,000 more than we thought. We're over $600,000 now, and we haven't seen that in 15 years as far as revenue sharing goes. So that's good for us as far as setting taxes and whatnot. The school board is going to meet this coming Monday, March 16th. 6 o'clock, they're going to have a budget meeting, so that'll be the first time that the public and the board has seen the proposed school budget. So that's this coming Monday. I'm going to touch more on this when we get to tax-acquired properties, but I did want to let you know that 19 Middle Street, which has been owned by the town for 2 years now, the owner passed away and his daughter has gone through the process of selling it. I heard from Corson Blaisdell's office, they're closing on that Wednesday. So it'll change hands and the town will get all of its back taxes. That's all I've got.
Good. All right, new business, number 1, department heads. We have we had the police and we have the sheriff here, if you'd like to add anything to that.
No, just I gave you a rough draft. Well, it's going to be the report for this month in February. And the big two things in February outside the vehicle stops and normal police activity is that we handled quite a unique scam at a local business in town where the call came in. They kept the manager or on the phone telling them to take a lot of money out of all your money out of the cash drawer and go get debit cards and give us the PIN numbers, and they actually did that. We were able to, the detective division also got involved, and we were able to, we're still working the case, and Green Dot, the business didn't lose any money. We were able to get them in touch, and they were refunded the money, but that was a scam we're working on. And the other of significance is that we sent Deputy Dyer to a adolescent mental health training to help him do better for his job. The program was developed by the National Center for Youth Opportunity and Justice. So, I also just, I know you all got the weekly report, but annual report, but I our deputies in Madison stopped over 1,487 vehicles last year in the town of Madison. We covered 220 motor vehicle crashes, and we did 773 property checks, and we arrested 20 people for operating under the influence of alcohol.
Happy to report I wasn't on any of those categories. Sheriff? Mr. Elias?
I would just like to say that, yeah, I know you guys are doing a good job. I hear, not quite often, but often, where we don't see enough cruisers in town. And I really didn't think much of that until Tim last meeting told us that the budget was going up to like 515 or 16,000. And I think, Dale, that if we, see that report you just gave?
Yes, sir.
If we could somehow have a quarterly report where you could come in, or someone from the department, on camera, so that people do know that you're doing something, because they equate no car to nothing being done. And they're concerned about their tax dollars not being spent.
Right.
And because we know, like I say, we know that you do that because we get this report, but this report, they don't know that out there.
Yeah,
So if we could do something like that.
Absolutely, I think that's doable. We can come in, personally come in 4 times a year, quarterly, and give a public report.
Would that work?
Yeah,
Because
that's
that way
right.
people would see that something, you are actually doing something.
Mr. Moody?
I think something that would enhance that for you is maybe either quarterly or halfway through the year, set up an interview with Channel 11. And what they don't get on our camera, they surely will get on that camera. And that way you can get a lot out to the public if they have any concerns or something, who to contact, who to talk to, And I think it would be time that, for the statistics. People like statistics.
Right?
They don't know anything unless they see numbers. And I think it would really behoove you to take advantage of that. It can be done at your convenience, whatever.
So, what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you'd like us to come in 4 times a year, quarterly, and that is doable. And then in addition to that, at least a couple times a year, do something with the local TV station.
Yes.
And we can do that.
Yes, and I think it would enhance a lot of the questions and give the people the answers that they're looking for. They're inquisitive, but
Isn't that more, so who would be at the producer would be asking the questions? How would we get those questions?
I could probably record it and ask you the questions over the statistics and stuff.
Well, what I'm thinking about is prior, if we announced that we were going to be there, that they could get the questions to the town manager, and so that we could answer those questions to the citizens.
I mean, I almost think it might be your report, just giving them a report instead of having questions for you, or you putting something forward, and maybe that might be a way for one of the deputies to come in and sit in and be part of that. So somebody gets to.
They actually, the first couple times, probably the chief or I would do that, but not a bad idea, that the deputy, that controls.
They can put a name with a face.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Yeah.
That's absolutely great.
Yeah.
Are we still making the monthly report that we get available at the town office?
It is, all the reports are in the clerk's office.
Because
So if anybody
that's,
ever
if
asks-
somebody's asking for statistical data, it's always available at the town office,
Yeah.
because we get a monthly report anyway. So just in response to some of those people, I get it in my email, George, but
Right. Yeah.
you get a hard copy in your file.
I think that might be a big idea.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it just is.
If you can see my phone.
There.
Any other questions?
Rotary gun.
Mr. Elias, sorry.
I would just like to say that, because being the dinosaur on this board, that when we didn't have the camera, you go to town meeting and it would be long. The camera alleviates a lot of questions at town meeting. So probably like what Mr. Moody said could be done like in May, before town meeting, April or May, because when people see budgets going up, they got all kinds of questions. And to alleviate a lot of that problem, I think that would do it.
Sushan?
I think there's a ton of stuff for you guys to talk about, you know, where we've been, where we've come to, the school resource officer and that type of thing, which were all things that the public asked us for. And you were able to respond, and I think those are things that are really, would be beneficial to get out there.
Well, we did respond, but I mean, it is a partnership. I mean, we really don't, that collaboration is what moves us in that direction.
Right.
But can we do I guess the question is, can we do a better job communicating? And the short answer is yes. Sometimes in the busyness of the day, there's a lot that goes on in the day. That's put on the back burner. Can we do better? Well, we're gonna try to do better at that.
And perhaps because, like you say, this is a collaboration, maybe we need to do a better job of saying, hey, it's time to bring, you know,
Yeah, that's
time to bring the parties together so we can talk about it.
I
It's
can
not
tell,
on you.
no, I know, but I can tell you that the town manager and I, in my opinion, have a very good relationship. And issues that affect the community or affect the deputies that work in Madison, we have an open door. Conversely, the town manager is not shy of calling me if he perceives a problem or has been presented a problem. So what we sometimes forget, or I forget, I'll take the blame, is that the world is more than just us in this room right here. It's the people that put us here. And so I will endeavor to make it a better.
Thank you.
And I'll schedule a time in May that we'll get together and we'll
Fantastic.
go down.
Because you can help drive that Somerset TV process too. with your
I'll ask all the
background.
questions. You won't look at them.
With your background in broadcasting or whatever.
All right, we have the fire department report, and if there's any questions on that?
I just want to make a couple of comments, and Dan's here, and might be able to give us a little more insight. Many of you had a chance to see the newly purchased brush truck. That truck, if we're not aware, like I'm not always aware of equipment, replaced a 1994 that was really on its last legs. And that was a purchase that Dan and Dawn made out of Vermont, was it, traveled to? And it's really nice, and it's going to respond more frequently, so I think it's going to be better used. But I want to clarify, because this board has been having lots of conversations about the rescue vehicle that's over in Company 1. This is not a replacement for the rescue vehicle, totally different operation. I don't know if you want to comment any more on that.
No, I just like to thank you two for working closer to Donnie on this. This thing happened fast. My first question to Donnie was, is this possible in doing this? And he said it was, and once I started to call around, I was always a day late for the vehicles I was looking for, and we found this one in Vermont, and it's going to be very well used. It's a lot safer vehicle. It has seating for up to 5 people in the vehicle, and we'll get a lot of use out of it. And thank you guys for your support as well. So we're very blessed with the equipment we have over here, and it shows. So
One of the reasons that this didn't have to go through the selectmen is Don used part of the capital that was raised at town meeting last year to make the purchase on this. So the other recent purchase is a efficiency main redo of all the lights. The lights in here and the lights out in the bay were all redone over the weekend, I think.
it's been about 2 weeks now.
About 2 weeks, all LEDs. So it's about a $5,000 project. Don took that out of his building budget, and he'll get a $2,000 rebate from Efficiency Main on that process. So just want to highlight a couple of things.
while we're on the topic of purchasing thing, we still haven't received 2020.
Fire has a shiny new vehicle. Sheriff?
Yeah, so, I actually met with Sam Height this morning. I was told that the reason for the backlog is that they lost an order of 8,000. That supposedly has been corrected. I've been told that the vehicle is in New England and we should see it this week sometime. So we'll start that process. That will then become the car one. And car one that we have now, which has the highest mileage, will be the SRO vehicle.
The only other thing I'd add to the fire report is we pushed the button today and submitted the 2019 Assistance to Firefighters Grant. We're asking for $325,000 to go toward the replacement of the 30-year-old pumper truck. I think that's number 73. Yeah. So now we just wait and see where we score. So,
Mr. Road Commissioner?
Yeah, well, it's been pretty light on the snow lately. Guys in the garage getting some projects finished up. They're working on the sand screen, which we had the money for the town meeting to build. We ended up building that in-house with our own equipment, our own guys, and they'll be finishing that up this week. In front of you guys, there's a map
I color-coded there now.
for Chamberlain Court, and which is right off the Lower Mills Road, right out here in East Madison. And the gentleman who purchased lots 14, 15, and 13 has requested if that part of that road can be discontinued. The person that lives in lot 10 was not interested in giving up their 130 feet or whatever it was, for the road closure. Just bringing this before you because if we agree to do this, it will have to go in front of the town meeting and be voted on by the voters.
So you're talking from where the blue starts?
Yes.
Up around that bend?
Actually, not even around that bend. It's 180 feet from where that blue starts, 180 feet headed basically northwest. He has purchased the old Chamberlain farm up on the hill. He uses most of the lawn up there for a pasture for his horses, and keeps it fenced off and just doesn't really want to care less if there's a road up there or not, so.
It doesn't go anywhere anyways.
No, it's a dead end, yeah. Yeah, and the three people that previously lived there, the two people that previously lived there petitioned the town back in 1992, I believe it was, to get that as a town way.
This does not landlock anything of any,
No.
in any way.
Now, does Chamberlain Court, do we take care of that?
We do, we maintain it.
So
We,
you have enough to be able to plow that and enough room to get around up there?
well, what the driver's been doing this year is just driving in, plowing, dumping off, backing out, and then going again. We used to turn around up in there and try to back out, and it's quite a project with a bigger truck, especially toward the end of the winter where the snow banks are close to the road. And the road isn't in very good shape to begin with. It was just an old driveway is what it was.
The process of this,
So the process is the Board of Selectmen has to hold a public hearing, send all the notices. In this case, it's fortunate because a lot of this notice work has already been done. One landowner owns land around 75% of the road. So we really only have to really officially send letters to Nick and the Dawes family. Then the Selectmen would hold a public hearing. After the public hearing, if they saw fit, they would vote to put it on town meeting warrant. Just so happens that the town of Anson did something very similar just last week at their town meeting, where they discontinued a portion of a road. So they got the language for that on their warrant from MMA. So I'm gonna just run this by legal and make sure we're following the law. Here's the tricky thing that I think Jeff may want to recommend, and Anson did this too. It's a and/or project. You can discontinue the road and leave a public easement there, or you can discontinue the road and discontinue the public easement. If you discontinue the road and the public easement, all of the land goes back to the abutting landowners, and there's no easement access for the public on that road anymore. The law changed in 2018 to allow this, and that's the road that route really that Hanson took on. So I know we had talked about that
Yeah, we did
possibility.
this afternoon, yeah.
So the Dawes don't want that to happen though, right? They want to have access to that.
According to this recommendation, the Dawes would still have public access to that portion of Chamberlain Court that they,
We're gonna start
that they,
here and go
that
up
they
that way.
need, right.
Okay. All right, as long as they have access.
Yeah, and speaking with Mrs. Dawes, she didn't want to give up that right, that 130 feet or whatever it was, so that will still be maintained by the town.
Moody?
I can't believe that those people that want to discontinue this want any type of an easement.
Right.
You know, for a public just to go across their land when the road's gone.
Right.
I wouldn't, I mean, I'm sure we have to ask that question to those people.
I guess the option of leaving the public easement there is if you thought that down the road we would reverse this and then we would make it a public way again. But I think one of the ways of avoiding that is taking the easement and have the town meeting vote to just completely take it back to the land.
If I was one of those landowners, that's the way I'd want to see it.
I would agree with you.
So,
Externalize.
And we're talking about this blue loop on here.
Yes,
We're gonna keep the yellow part.
yes, yes.
The blue loop, all 13, 14, 15 is owned by one guy.
correct.
What does he care about having a road in there? Now, if he sells that 13 lot, he can have that in a deed anyway. He can get that, but he can make his own road.
Correct. He could put his road anywhere he wanted, right?
I mean, if I was buying 13 and you're not landlocking anybody, he owns the land, right? So, I mean, if that was me, I wouldn't even want the road, I wouldn't even want the town involved in that road.
That's why he's asking us to take it to town meeting
Right.
to discontinue.
Exactly.
That gets rid of, is this a town road now?
It is now a very skimpy road.
So this guy could demand it being plowed?
We plow it now.
Oh,
Not the
yeah,
whole
the blue, the blue loop?
Yeah, well, we don't go all the way up to the loop, we go up to about where the loop starts, because it's like, you can't get a truck around there, it's just big enough for a car.
But since 1992, we've been plowing all the way up around that loop.
Okay.
Okay, so if we get rid of that loop and that little bit of blue to the loop, and just keep the yellow, that appeases, you're not landlocking anybody, because he owns everything.
Yeah,
13's landlocked. This guy sells this property here.
Very simple
Right now, he can-
decision for me.
That's what Chamberlain Court,
Yeah,
but
that's what,
we're leaving Chamberlain Court, right?
Yes.
So anybody that bought 13 could access it through Chamberlain Court.
Right.
Yes, because it's still part of the town road.
Because that's
Right.
still gonna be a town road, so
That's
we're
right.
not
Oh, I
landlocking
see.
anybody.
You're right, they come in the very edge of it, yeah.
I think.
All right, so we'll bring,
So I wanted to make sure that the road commissioner had an opportunity to explain it, and you saw it before we actually put it on an agenda. So we'll probably go through that process in the next couple meetings.
So we are going to put this on the warrant?
We'll put it on an agenda for you to have,
Agenda, yeah.
to have a public hearing after that, you can decide.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
and what I'll do is, I'll go speak to the Dawes family, and I'll see Nick and let them know, I don't know how they are on public meetings and stuff, but I'll make sure that they're aware of it if they need
Just
to.
let them know the process we have to go through.
Yeah.
okay, anything else?
No, I believe that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Danny. Number 2, discuss update to emergency management planning.
I don't know if you've been watching the news, but there's a virus out there. And
What's it called?
we've,
Not
we've,
named.
we've been trying to, at the town office, walk that fine line between being responsible and not reacting to panic. We haven't had many folks really express concern, with the exception of one very vigilant person that emails me almost every day. So what I thought it was a good opportunity to do was just take a look at our overall emergency management plan. I talked with Mike Smith at the county, and they oversee emergency management plans. And I just added an attachment that had to do with the pandemic threat in general. And what they're doing, this is kind of a changing, updating type document where there's lots of information coming forward and everybody's trying to pool together resources. Just today, the Maine Municipal Association created a site where municipalities can go to see best practices. Maine Municipal has someone going to the daily CDC briefings on this, bringing back information. They'll also take a look at the fiscal financial impact of it all. I'll also stay in very close contact with the school system. And, again, I think everyone I've talked to has had that same, let's be cautious type approach, but let's not go crazy on this. And so basically, we're just kind of keeping our thumb on best practices, what we should be doing, and not overreacting. So that's basically, I didn't know if the board had any questions or further direction on that.
So, sounds good. Thank you. Number 3, discuss tax acquired properties. A, quitclaim deeds.
So you should have the list there in the packet. There are a couple I need to do some physical visits to the property because I'm not getting any response by phone or by mail. You see account number 737 up there. I have not heard back from that individual. Account number 1049, that's the one I mentioned in my communication item. That should be cleared up this week. 1762, again, I'm gonna have to make a visit there. 142, they've made a payment and they've committed to making a $200 payment on the first of every month. And I've encouraged them to do that for about the next year. If they're able to do that consistently for a year, they'll have all their back taxes paid. I have no reason to doubt that they wouldn't at least try from what I've talked to. 2106, that's the ministry that has the place on Whittier Farm Road. They've already told me that they couldn't pay until April or May, but I will stay in contact with them. Account number 788, I expect that to be paid off in a couple of months. Account number 60, that's the 14 acres of kind of wet, swampy land out past Madison Electric's substation on Jones Street. I don't believe that the owner is alive. I've been trying to contact his daughter in Belfast and haven't had much luck, so we'll see how that turns out. And then Schuster's Law Office, account number is 1075. That I've been in contact with some people that have told me that there's an interest in it. I'm sure there's all sorts of probate and things going on in regards to that property, but that property, I'm not going to bring any recommendations to the board unless it includes all the back taxes, everything owed to Madison Electric, and everything owed to the sanitary district, because that totals thousands and thousands of dollars. So, we do have a couple of quitclaim deeds for properties that have been ratified.
Okay, we need a motion to award a quitclaim deed to Margaret Inman for 60 Maple Street and for Mary Louise Greenlaw at 54 John Street. Both are all paid up
For the 17th, yes.
for 17s.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve a quitclaim deed for Margaret Inman at 60 Maple Street and for Mary Louise Greenlaw at 54 John Street. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries. All right, number 4, discuss federal grant applications for Go Lab.
We've been busy at the town office, and I've had talks with the Anson Madison Sanitary District. We've been writing quite a few grants that are federal grants that would assist the redevelopment of the property down at the old mill, which has been purchased by Go Lab. The tricky part about federal grants is the federal government has to give the money to a municipality, and the municipality can't give the money directly to Go Lab to use any way they want. They all want that money to be attached somehow to hard assets that are on the property that would stay in the municipality's name. So I wrote down on your handouts there 3 grants that we're currently working on. Probably the most straightforward one is a community development block grant. known as the CDBG grants. They have an economic development program. We've applied for $500,000. We may be capped at $250 because GoLab is a startup. But what we're proposing to do with that is to help them purchase units that go on top of the building that circulate the heat. One of the biggest hurdles that whole area has to overcome is there's no heat in that building. The paper machine provided the heat when it was running. So now with that paper machine out, there needs to be heat in there. So GoLabs is in the process of buying a boiler, getting it hooked up to natural gas. As many of you know, they're tearing down the old boiler building, the old specialty materials building. They're actually going before the planning board, GoLab is, tomorrow night to talk about that whole process. These grants are going to try to help foster some of that. And the way you have to couch it is, the federal government's going to give Madison these grants so that we can do things to help shore up that property down there. But if GoLab doesn't come through and they go under, the federal government doesn't lose their money. The federal government has still given money that is tied up in hard assets that are at that property. So the first one, the CDBG, is for these units that go on top of the building that recirculate the heat. Basically, they push the heat back down. There's need for 10 of them. They run about $60,000 a piece. So we're applying for some funds that would go directly towards those. It's really cut and dry. If we get that grant, then we just put the serial number of those units on there and take a picture of them every year and send them to the federal government. They say, there's where your money is. Likelihood of getting funding on that, I think, is moderate, which I think is about 50-50. The next one on the list is the shortly named Increasing Prosperity in Maine's Forest Economy Communities grant. That uses federal funds. Now this is a little trickier because there's a high likelihood we'll get this funding because this grant opportunity was made available specifically to towns that lost paper mills. So the only people that could apply was Madison, Millinocket, East Millinocket, and Lincoln. And so we've had the site visits, they've told us how much they like us, and so we have an idea that we could get anywhere between $500,000 or $600,000 for that. But again, we just can't pass that money directly through to GoLab. So one of the proposals that's been made to us is the sanitary district wants to look into building a anaerobic digester on site. I don't know if we've had this discussion sometime over the last couple of years. They've had a feasibility study done. They know how much it would take. They've identified pieces of equipment that are on GoLab's property that would benefit them. So one of the recommendations for this grant is to the town of Madison to pass the money to the sanitary district and have the sanitary district purchase some of the equipment they need for this digester. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if they purchase the tanks from GoLab with this money, GoLab ends up with the money. The federal government is okay with that. It checks their boxes. They're willing to sign off on it. So we can't give it directly to GoLab, but we can give it to an entity that's going to buy property that they need from GoLab for something, and then GoLab benefits from it. The likelihood of getting that grant is pretty high. We should hear something in another couple weeks on that one. Connected to that is the Future Forest Economy Project, and this comes from EDA, which is federal government funds. Right now we're talking about possibly using these funds to match that $600,000 for the sanitary district to purchase the assets. So that one's not as secure. I think that's about a 50-50 to get that one. And the project is not fixed on that one. That may be actually used to buy the boiler that GoLabs needs to provide heat for the site. So at the end of the day, the town would take these grants, if they get them, and pass them to the site to make improvements on site that would be there, whether GoLabs is there or not. So I hope I've explained that well, so if anybody ever asks you a question about it. One of these will require a town meeting discussion. That's probably CDBG.
Tim, by sanitary district purchasing what you're talking about, how would that enhance them financially?
The sanitary district?
Yes.
At the end of the day, it's gonna take about $10 to $15 million to build an anaerobic digester. If they're able to get that anaerobic digester going, they can take a lot of the waste that they're getting trucked in and use the byproduct after they treat all the water and put it right into the digester. The digester creates methane. They can clean up that methane and sell it right to GoLab to heat their building. Right now, GoLab would have to buy natural gas from Summit, but if they have a digester on site, they would be able to buy their natural gas right from the sanitary district. Now, probably this digester wouldn't generate enough, so they'd have to subsidize it with Summit, but it could be a win for the sanitary district. The synchronicity of this, which is beautiful, is the sanitary district treats 3,000 tons of tomato waste from backyard farms. They take these tomato wastes in these trucks, they put it through a big juicer, they suck all the water out, and they're left with 1,000 tons of biomass. Right now, they're taking that 1,000 tons to Norwood landfill. They could put all of that right into a digester and let the microbes go to town on it and turn it into methane gas. So they have everything they need to make this happen, and the equipment that GoLab owns, these big container tanks that you see from the Anson side of the river, and all the piping that connects them, that's what sanitary needs to make this work. And GoLab doesn't need it. In fact, they're mothballing it all. They don't need any of that part of the facility. So all signs point to this may be working to kind of bring all these pieces together. This grant's just one part of that.
Yeah, that's what I was interested to learn how the enhancement was going to flow there if this happened.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity, I think.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Mr.
Well, I would just like to say that if GoLab wasn't even there, you could take methane to electricity.
Right.
Like they do down to waste management. I mean, down to waste management. They get those two generators down there.
Right.
So if GoLab wasn't there, we could still purchase a generator like they've got and use the methane to make electricity.
These projects, whether it be the boiler or the digester and all that, they all enhance the property. Like, you know, we're excited that GoLab is here, we're excited about what they're doing, but at the end of the day, they're still trying to raise $60 million. They're still a startup company. There is risk involved in this. If we can earn these grants to shore up that site, we want GoLabs to succeed, but at the end of the day, we don't want an empty site with no heat, no generation of power and all that. We want it to be advantageous to the town.
Just kind of running dual track.
Right.
Keeping the facility so that it's viable,
Enhancing it.
while
Yeah.
at the same time setting it up so that GoLabs can be successful.
And it benefits GoLab in the short run. Right?
Yes.
So just a couple of questions. First one on the heat exchange unit that you would put in the air circulator to heat that. So is there a depreciation rate on it? So the part of the contingency is that they want you to purchase something that's going to stick with the town. Is there a time frame that says this is no longer viable? Like, do they expect it to be there for, say, 15 years? I mean, where this is a high-risk business, I mean, like you say, they're trying to raise $60 million.
Right.
Let's say they fold up and a company buys them and decides we're tearing the place down.
Right.
So are we in breach of contract because now we don't own that anymore? Is there any repercussion from the federal side on that?
My understanding is with the federal government, you'd actually enter into a contract, and the numbers I'm hearing are like 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
For items like that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm in the application stage, so I don't have all those
Sure.
details.
And the other question was on the sanitary district side. So you kind of answered my question, but so if we, built this system for the sanitary district.
Help build.
Right, yeah, right. Very small part of helping build this. But if we help build this, and they're selling the methane back to GoLab, where's the financial benefit to GoLab for that?
Well,
And the reason I ask is because they could easily just put tanks up and buy it from
right.
a large place and just have the fuel that way, and it really wouldn't matter.
So the financial benefit to the sanitary district is they have several options. They could sell the clean methane right to Go Labs and use it to heat it. Like Mr. Elias said, they could set up a turbine and make energy and just sell it to the grid and get the rec credits, which is really advantageous at this point. This feasibility study was not just something they came up with. They spent $60,000 and they got a grant for another $60,000 to get this feasibility study done. And it shows all the different payback systems that are there. So giving the methane or selling the methane to Go Lab is just one of the various options. And it's interesting to note that Summit, not to be critical, but Summit has struggled to get contracts with major users in our area. And many people don't realize this, but I think it's public knowledge. If not, it's going to be in a second. Summit's pipeline goes directly to Backyard Farms, but they have not been able to negotiate a deal with Backyard Farms, and Backyard Farms still trucks in all their natural gas from Canada. It's cheaper to bring it in on a truck than from the pipeline, so it's not always the easiest choice to go with the pipeline that's there.
Sure.
All right, Lucian.
In this sanitary district thing, if this comes to fruition with this methane, is there potential benefit to the sanitary users that may help with rates? I know we hear all the time about sanitary rates being too high. And
one of the things it will do, and I've talked to Dale and Peter about this, one of the things it will do is obviously enhance that trucked-in waste revenue stream. Because one of the things that the sanitary district is very hesitant about taking right now is grease waste. Because to get the water out is a messy process and it gunks up the system. But if they get grease trucked in, it goes right into the digester. So it saves the sanitary system. So anything that they can do to increase that revenue stream side of things takes pressure off the ratepayers. They're looking at USDA for a loan grant on this, and part of that process is USDA wants to know how is this going to benefit the ratepayers.
okay, good. As long as that's so.
Mr. Elias.
As I remember, I think Go Lab paid half of that $60,000 a week.
The previous owner, New Mill Capital.
Yeah, that came in before we did this before Go Lab, right?
That's correct.
The owners of the mill, bought the mill, financed 50%
They
of that
kept it.
60.
Yeah.
Okay, so this all started before Go Lab came in.
Yeah. In fact, the original feasibility study calls for raising money so that the sanitary district could buy the whole facility. But now they don't have to do that.
And again, just the reason for my question was to make sure that we were kind of having some forward thinking about not being in breach of contract where it's a federal grant.
That's right. That's right. The other thing to keep in mind is if you do get any of these federal government grants, that triggers another $3,000 or $4,000 in our audit costs. Because when you have more than $750,000 in grants, you have to get a special single audit done, and we've looked into what that costs. So just another thing to keep in mind. All right.
Can we backcharge that with the grant?
Can we do that?
Can we backcharge those costs of the grant? There's got to be some administration cost in there.
You know, that's less and less. That's a good question. Probably with one of these grants, it would be easier than the other two. But
Well, I know that some of those grants that we write, there's always an administration.
that's not as advantageous as it used to be.
No?
No.
Okay.
Speaking as a former grant writer, you can't make the money you used to.
All right, number 5, discuss creation of the Madison Housing Initiative.
So I bring this proposal to you tonight for a couple of reasons. One, it came up during my annual review that the board wanted to make sure that housing was a priority part of economic development in Madison. And while we have seen an uptick in the number of older homes being purchased and renovated, and that's, I think, just a natural part of the market, foreclosures aren't sitting empty like they used to. We still are in a situation where we need somehow to create more new construction, senior housing, workforce housing, however you want to look at it. So I took a look at a couple of different towns that are doing different types of initiatives. This is not something where we're actually gonna take control of development. This is not our job is not to be in the real estate business. Our job is not to be pushing the development. So that's why I wrote these goals on here, to advocate, to promote, and to assess. So I'm looking to create a committee that would advocate for the development of new houses, that would promote the Madison area as a great place to build, and to assess the town's current housing inventory. One of the reasons that I'm recommending a committee is when you apply for grants and funding for this, like, we would have to apply for some help to assess the town's housing inventory. I'm not giving everybody clipboards and going out and writing stuff down. You'd actually have to find somebody, the main development foundation does this sort of thing. They like to work with a committee rather than a select board or planning board or one individual. They like to look at this from a committee's perspective. I'd like to see a committee that's made up of people from the business area, maybe take in some people that have backgrounds in economic development and housing. But then Jeff and I were talking today, I certainly would want to have the utilities there. I want to have someone from Madison Electric, sanitary, water, and the highway department, so that we could kind of talk about this from a top-down perspective of what it takes. So I'm not asking for any money for this. I'm not asking for any of your time or energy. I'm just asking if you would authorize me to put together a housing committee.
Mr. Moody?
If that being the case, Tim, I think the top priority needs to be for the elderly before workforce.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this state, it's well known that this state is the elderliest state in the country.
Per capita.
Per capita. And about 25% of our people are 60 and over. And what isn't going into elderly housing is going to be going down on the East Madison Road.
In the Elias wing?
Right?
The Elias wing.
But I think if you're serious about this committee, I think the number one priority has to be for the elderly.
Do you think that priority will be addressed in the assessment piece, where you're assessing what the needs are? If we, everybody has their idea of what the most important thing is, but when you really put the numbers to it, then you can figure it out.
And when you do an assessment, and I've already got someone lined up to help us kind of get this started with the Maine Development Foundation, but when you do an assessment, you're looking at your housing inventory, but you're also addressing the needs in the community, taking into account that you may have an entity that's bringing in X amount of jobs, and what does that do? What we've already seen with senior housing down there behind the high school with Bill Perkins is people are selling nice older family homes, going to live there, and then a young family comes and buys that home.
Yeah.
That's perfect, that's what we want.
Right.
We just need more of it, because there's a waiting list down there now. So I think that doing a study and an assessment is important, because once you get to the point where now you're ready to say, okay, we need to apply for a grant, so, and I'll use this as an example, we could put water and sewer and pave a road somewhere where a developer could go in. Once we start asking for those kind of funds, we need to have the data that we get in the assessment. So.
All right, so we're looking for a motion to create the Madison Housing Initiative Committee.
I'll make that a motion.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to create the Madison Housing Initiative Committee to include residents, business owners, regional economic development, and housing representatives. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries.
Oh, you're right here, just sign
Sign that one. Yeah, okay.
Tell Mr. Elias to sign that, just send it down.
Sign what? Got no heading, I ain't signing it.
Don't ask any questions.
No, it's not blank. It's not
All
blank.
right.
It's got all the words on
If
it.
it's blank, I ain't signing it.
Selectmen's concerns, Mr. Moody?
None, sir.
Mr. Elias?
None for me, sir.
Mr. Mr. Savage? Mr. Duchamp?
None for me.
Okay, citizens' concerns. Yes, Catherine?
Well, there was somebody that was gonna come tonight, but she and I both have observed that there's an awful lot of speeders through East Madison. And,
You have the right man to talk to right here.
yes, I know. And she has a special needs child that occasionally escapes the house and he doesn't know, he's not supposed to be near the road, and they top the hill, the south hill, and come down over there flying. So, it's an issue.
All right, so noted, thank you.
Any other questions? Looking for motion to adjourn?
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn, all those in favor? All in favor, the motion carries, we adjourn at 7:20.